As of right now, I can confidently say Trump is getting screwed. He's getting obliterated in all the national polling averages. He's losing substantially amongst the base that has carried the Republican Party a long way all throughout American history. That is the boomer suburbanite base and women voters in this country, which is why now you're starting to see Donald Trump try to appeal to these same demographics and groups by saying, I like you, I need you, and just making all these type of corny promotional ads, basically. Trump is getting fucked so badly, I can confidently say we'll have President-elect Biden in a couple weeks. That's a fact. Because of the enormous amount of people that have already voted and that are voting, despite the measures of the GOP to engage in voter suppression, despite that, you're still seeing an enormous amount of people coming out in massive droves well before the US election. Joe Biden is now at a double digit lead nationwide now. This is something that Hillary Clinton was never able to do. She never quite got to. Now you see Joe Biden with a 10 to 11 digit lead nationwide this close to the election. Hillary Clinton was already down to 5%, 4% already now. And he's kicking Trump's ass around the country, but in particularly where it matters the most, in places like Michigan, just fucking him. That's somewhere where Trump barely won by 0.1%, outperforming him. This is why Trump is in Pennsylvania a lot, outperforming him. This is supposed to be Trump country, Ohio. Biden is competing with him there. Barely, but he's competing with him there. Now, do I believe this will happen for Biden? Probably not. If Trump's base turns out the way they could and should, probably not by this less of a margin. Georgia, Georgia. This is almost by a full percent. So this isn't just an outlier or anything like that. This is almost by a full percent. So I somewhat believe this. And Georgia has won for the Democrats before. It's not foreign to the Democrats. Bill Clinton won it. So this wouldn't surprise me if this flipped for Biden. And of course, Wisconsin, that Trump won by 0.1%. Biden is up close to 8 points in this state. And they have a Democratic governor. That's another thing about all these states throughout the Rust Belt. They all have Democratic governors. Texas, Trump is barely up. He won it by um the least margin of a Republican president. McCain had more votes in Texas than Trump. Romney had more votes in Texas than Trump. So that's concerning for the Republican Party. North Carolina, Biden is up. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. Trump can't afford to lose North Carolina. And all these places that Trump is losing, here, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Florida, like it's over. Joe is growing to a consistent, healthy lead in Arizona. That's a major blow for the Republican Party. So we fill in the map exactly to what we just saw. So Joe is kicking his ass in Pennsylvania. He's kicking his ass in Michigan. He's kicking his ass in Wisconsin. Minnesota's off the table. I'm not even considering it. He's having a healthy lead in Arizona. That's it already. I'm not even done yet. He's competing with him in Georgia. This might barely happen. He has a consistent, healthy lead in North Carolina, consistent, healthy lead in Florida. It just gets bad for Trump. It just gets bad for him. It just gets bad for him. A plurality lead in Ohio, not a big lead, but a plurality. But nevertheless, to say this is what happens. And then Texas will probably go for Trump. And early voting has already started, and the lines are enormous and long, and over 10 million people have already voted. 10 million people, and the election is still a couple weeks away. There's places around the country, like in Georgia, where they're saying they've never seen this amount of people vote before, and Georgia is now projected to go to Biden. So, if the election were held right now, Trump would lose majority of the country, including Texas, because Texas is a massive swing state. It's been the GOP's equivalent to California in terms of putting up massive numbers with their electoral college victories. Now Texas is starting to inch closer and closer towards the left and towards the Democrats. We've been saying this for some time now, and maybe perhaps 2020 could possibly come through, because when Beto ran against Ted Cruz, he only lost by 2 percentage points, literally only 2 percentage points. So, and Donald Trump actually won Texas by the lowest amount by a Republican president ever. So, even Mitt Romney and John McCain had more voters in Texas than Donald Trump did. Think about that. So places like Texas, Florida, North Carolina goes, Trump can kiss his reelection hopes goodbye. What are his supporters going to do? All they're going to do is basically bitch and cry and say that the president is being robbed because of the mail-in ballots and things of that nature. But the thing is, they'll have no merit to present to any court, because if it's an election mandate, a landslide, there's nothing to argue. You can't possibly argue anything. It's not close enough to, quite frankly, steal it in that case. The only reason why George W. Bush became the president was because Florida was close enough to where they could legally challenge what was going on in certain counties and certain places there in Florida, therefore making it go all the way up to the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court, so that he could eventually, essentially, do what he did, which was steal the U.S. election, because they had more Supreme Court justices, which is why Trump is now trying to do the same thing with Amy Coney Barrett. If the Democrats went on a mandate, a landslide, which they're projected to do higher than 08, there's nothing to challenge at that point in time. So then, if it's a mandate higher than 08, possibly close to the 1964 election, that's the way it's looking like now and being projected to look like. If it looks anything like 1964, the Republicans can, quite frankly, kiss the hopes of their America away for a couple years, because this will be a mandate like no other. Now, there'll also be lots of millions of disaffected people once they truly get a true sense of the Biden administration, but there's no telling what the Biden administration is going to do. They'll probably try to toss it off to Kamala, so then she starts her own term. So they'll probably hand it off to her at the very end of Biden's presidency. But this is basically what we're looking at. And until progressives position to run for the presidency, we're going to continue to grow in Congress, and we're going to continue to grow around the country, because more progressives keep winning. Because once the crooked Democrats, the establishment Democrats, once they win in places that Democrats have never won before and take some of these states and places, then their establishment deep state candidates will be challenged by actual progressives. And that's where progressives will win and take those places from them. After they take the suburbanite places that they're about to take right now, places like Georgia, places like Ohio, take Florida back once more again, win in those places, and like I said, progressives are going to challenge their candidates within House districts, within Senate seats, all the way up to the presidency, like I said, until we have another eventual progressive candidate running for president.